नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशधारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। श्रील प्रभुपाद की ISKCON लीडरशिप संघ 2023 की all of you ki jai. Thank you very much for this great privilege of discussing something that is most intrinsic to ISKCON's history. In fact, as I was walking towards this hall through the stalls that were there on both sides, I probably thought that maybe I don't need to make the presentation, because what we see here in ISKCON Leadership Sangha is unity in diversity. And as I say this, my dear teacher who taught me teaching, His Grace Atul Krishna Prabhu is about to walk off, and that will save you the time. But in any case, the point is that Srila Prabhupada said that if you put a pack of dogs in a room, you cannot expect peace. And he said that you say United Nations, but they have so many different flags. Every year, more flags are being added. It should be called actually Disunited Nations. And this, therefore, is the United Nations of the spiritual world. And the ISKCON Leadership Sangha is the most eminent, appropriate representation of this unity in diversity. So, in many ways, this could be the flagship topic for this whole ISKCON Leadership Sangha. It's a little bit overwhelming for us to be chosen for this topic, because our mentor, His Grace Brajabihari Prabhu, for this particular session, he was supposed to deliver this session, but he has some services in Govardhan. So, for a higher taste, no, yeah. You can stay back. This is Devi Varnashram, but the topic is different. No, but the topic is different. This is part of Devi Varnashram. So, this is about getting serious about unity and diversity. So, to get back on track, this is all about establishing the core principles of unity in diversity that Srila Prabhupada had held so close to his heart. We all know about cooperation, organization, which were stressed on so much by Srila Prabhupada towards the end part of his pastimes on this planet. So this topic really ties in so much with us. With me is my co-presenter, Acarya Ratna Prabhu. He is temple president of one of the temples in Kolkata. It's called New Town, and has been in the movement for a very long time. I myself am Rishi Kumar. I serve as the vice president for ISKCON Delhi. And both of us are part of the ISKCON Resolve team, which is one of the vision elements of His Grace Bhaktarup Prabhu for ISKCON India also. We are thankful that he's also here. What is most wonderful is we have so many mentors here. We are sure that by your ability, this session may not come off, but it will definitely come off by your blessings. So seek your blessings. You can just move on. So, what is this? It's straightforward. What is this? What is the first thing that comes to your mind? Symphony. A philharmonic orchestra. It's called a philharmonic because there is a harmony to it. Yeah, there is a chorus also. So, the musical instruments in an orchestra, you have percussion instruments, you have wind instruments, you have string instruments, and you have the sonata being rendered by several people in various forms. So, the part is that there are so many diverse instruments as part of an orchestra, but they all weave in together to produce that single element of harmony or symphony, which is exactly the word. So that is the essence of unity in diversity. They may all be different in terms of the music that they render, but this diverse range of music weaves in together to produce a single symphony or harmony. And that is a classic example of unity in diversity. Let's go closer to where we are from. The Purusha Sukta, this looks like a Greek god, but for the moment assume that we are talking about the Purusha. In the second canto we talk about Brahmanosya mukhamasid bahurajanyakritaha urutadasya yadveshah padbyagam shudro ajayata. The lotus face or the head is a Brahmana, or the intellectual class, as Srila Prabhupada used to say. The arms represent the administrative class or the martial class, And the thighs represent the mercantile class and the feet represent the labor class or the worker class. So all these are required. Srila Prabhupada did say that this society is to produce brahmanas and that the head is the most important element. But he also said that each of the parts of the body are required. They may all be diverse in their function, but they weave in together to perform that one act of supporting the human body perform its activities. Quite similarly, in ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada said this. Someone wants to read this out?
Every one of us is an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This accounts for unity in diversity.
What is our core philosophy? Is it Dvaita, Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, Shuddhadvaita, Dvaitadvaita? What is it? Sachinta Bheda Bheda. Jivera Sharupahai, Krishnir Nitya Das. So that is the diversity part of it. But Krishnir Tatastha Shakti Bheda Bhed Prakash. It is also simultaneously one and different from the living entity. Is simultaneously one and different from Krishna. So our whole core philosophy, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enunciated, is of Achintya Bheda Abheda. Because it is not conceivable for us to assume of something be one and different simultaneously. It could be completely different like the Pancha Bheda of Dvaita philosophy, Dvaita. Everything is different. Difference between Jiva and Jiva, Jiva and Prakriti, Jiva and Ishvara, Ishvara and Prakriti. There are 5 Bhedas. Or it could be completely one, like the Advaitins. But what Mahaprabhu established was simultaneously one and different. And that is the core of unity and unity in diversity. So this is a letter to Kirtananand Swami Oblique Prabhu. You want to read this?
Material nature means dissension and disagreement, especially in this Kali Yuga. But for this Krishna consciousness movement, its success will depend on agreement. Even though there are varieties of engagements, if we keep Krishna in the center, then there will be agreement in varieties. This is called unity in diversity.
But we fight on account of diversity, then it is simply the material platform. Please try to maintain the philosophy of unity in diversity. That will make our movement successful.
It's not just an ILS topic that is provided to us, so that we are forced to present this. It is an exhortation, an engagement, an instruction effectively from our founder Acarya, the most preeminent Shiksha Guru of this movement, Srila Prabhupada. So he's saying that we need to have unity in diversity. So one of the things that comes about is that unity is a more acceptable word from an overall context. Everybody likes to be nice, to belong, to conform, to be one, so on and so forth. So is it therefore appropriate that from a neoliberal situation, we allow so much diversity that the individual's free spirit is not discouraged? So do we give unlimited diversity? The answer is no. Because philosophically, if you give too much diversity, too much freedom, so to say, in terms of thought process within the movement, like the Kerala police, they have philosophy. Their motto is Mridu Bhave Dhrida Krite, which means you have to be firm in action, but the mood should be very affectionate, very soft. So if you have to look at it that way, we see that philosophically, we will allow people to have some softness, but if there is no firmness in terms of ensuring conformity or unity to some extent, then what will happen is we will have Mayavada, God is deaf, God is dumb, Nirakara, Nirguna, he has no qualities. Or this basically means somebody is detached from both Krishna and Maya. That's a Mayavadi. Or you are detached or you are attached to both Krishna and Maya. That is a Sahajiya. So both extremes can happen. You can be completely detached from Krishna and Maya as a Mayavadi, or you can be completely detached, completely attached to both Krishna and Maya as a Sahajiya. So these two extremes exist. If we give too much of a diverse situation to people, we allow people to be too diverse. And therefore, if we take it one step further in worship, Kamaisthayasthir Hrita Jnana Prapatyante Anya Devata. We do say that we should encourage people in the beginning of preaching to take up worship of the demigods. We don't want to disturb them. It is Yajanti Aviti Purvakam, but still we encourage them. But the fact is, if we don't introduce the element of unity into this diverse belief of an individual, it can again get out of hand. We will have multiple deities within an ISKCON temple. We'll have separate forms. Suddenly, somebody may want to worship Dattatreya. Somebody may want to worship Buddha because he's also Keshavadruta, Buddha Sharira. So we have to come up with where do we strike the line with regard to unity. And managerially, somebody is uncooperative. Although, like Voltaire says that I may not agree with you, but I disagree with you very end, you're right to disagree with me. So that principle does exist. However, if we have someone who is completely uncooperative or who does not follow the hierarchy and the managerial authority of, say, the GBC and the zonal management, then we will run into trouble. So it's a very thin line before we allow diversity into the system. So therefore, the other side, do we recommend unity at all costs? Unity sounds a so much more positive word, right? United we stand, divided we fall. So what about unity at all costs?
Movement is for training men to be independently thoughtful and competent in all types of departments of knowledge and action, not for making bureaucracy. Once there is bureaucracy, the whole thing will be spoiled. There must be always individual striving and work and responsibility, competitive spirit, not that one shall dominate and distribute benefits to the others and they do nothing but beg from you and you provide. Each center remain independent.
Written on 22nd December 1972. Very interesting. Exactly 5 months from the day I was born. So there must be a reason Prabhupada wrote this. Just go back once. This is interesting that His Grace Bhakturu Prabhu is here. I always wondered why did we take the risk of calling it the ISKCON Bureau? Because it can be easily misinterpreted that it is meant for bureaucracy. And Prabhupada clearly said bureaucrazy. So, time, Prabhupada wrote a letter to Srila Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. Letter to Srila Jayapataka Swami Maharaj saying in India there will be only one ISKCON that will be registered in Mumbai. Everything else, including Sridhar Mayapur, is a branch. Sridhar Mayapur, not in that sense, the temple of Sridhar Mayapur and the properties. They are branch of ISKCON registered in Mumbai. So that is governed by the governing council, which is the ISKCON Bureau. So Prabhupada himself is bringing in diversity within the unity. So for the US, where there is a federal structure, there can be multiple ISKCONs registered in various places. But in India, he is saying there's only one ISKCON. And both are working cohesively. There are many bureau members who are serving as in various service capacities in the GBC. So how does this all weave in together? Yes, everything has to be united. In ISKCON, it's the United Nations of the spiritual world. Why do diverse elements come in? Why do thoughts of diversity come in to ISKCON? Can you just press B? B. You just press B. No, B. Press the letter B. Yeah. So, I want to ask you this question. Could you please come up with some reason as to why diverse elements exist within ISKCON? What could be the reason? Yes, Priti. I'm sorry I have to speak before you. So senior.
Because it's the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, not the Indian Society for Krishna Consciousness.
Yeah. So that's Madhvacharya's main preaching of differences. There's a difference between the material and spiritual. There's a difference between the jiva and the param. And then there's differences between every material element. There's differences between every species. There's differences within the species. It's not that they enter in. It's just that's it. That's life, you know. So the Mayavadis get frustrated with that and say the spiritual must be all one. I'm crazy because there's so much variety, you know? And the more we look around, every grain of sand is different.
So thoughts of diversity essentially come from the following. One is just the nature of the world, the way it is. It is Krishna's arrangement. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. It has to be diverse. There are so many. From the one come the many. It's Krishna's arrangement. And then there are purva samskaras and prarabdha karma. Not everybody who comes to the movement is a Shuddha Bhakta. They are Sukritis, Chaturvida Bhajantema. So they have purva samskaras and prarabdha. They bring in that. And there is, like it was pointed out by both the Prabhujis, that There's a different cultural upbringing. We are truly international, so there are diverse cultures that come in. And there are family means of doing things. It's perfectly okay for someone in the West to just get up and say, wish good evening or good afternoon to father. But I come from the south of India. If I don't offer Sashtanga Namaskarams to my father, sometimes he used to get offended. So it's just diverse, but it's still respectable. And there is a different levels of early training in Krishna consciousness. Different people have been exposed to different levels of training. And like Prabhuji said, ISKCON is there in over 100 countries. It has to be different. And finally, Srila Prabhupada himself is the reason, because he wanted to ensure that everybody was engaged appropriately in Krishna's service. Yuktasya bhaktamscha niyunjatopi. And we know that anyone knows this famous example? Prabhupada used to give this example. Yes, Gopal Prabhu. You have the mic? Maharaj has the mic now? Moving mic. You can pass it on, Prabhu. Sorry.
This story of the two brahmacharis arguing. One says,
why does it have to be brahmacharis?
Because who argues more? The two men were arguing that this paper was cut by scissors, and the other one said it's cut by a knife. But the man who said it was cut by a knife was a little larger. And larger is not necessarily better, but he's stronger also. So he got frustrated with the brahmachari who said it was scissors, and he picked him up and he threw him in the river. And as he was drowning, he put up his hand and it's scissors. Even though he's being killed, still he will not give up his position.
Great, thank you. There is a saying in Hindi, Sar kata sakte hain. I'm willing to cut my head, but sar jhuka sakte nahi. I will not bow my head. I will cut my head, but I will not bow. So therefore, we are saying that the goal of unity in diversity is this essentially. It is unity, but without monotonous uniformity. We don't want clones. Not monotonous uniformity. And we don't want diversity with a fragmentation that is totally dichotomous. So no unity without monotonous uniformity, and no diversity without dichotomous fragmentation. No, not we really want this. Unity without monotonous uniformity and diversity without dichotomous fragmentation. So let's see how it can be. Yeah. Unity without, unity would mean that unity would not necessarily mean that you and I do the same thing. Like in Hindi, they say, Anusaran theek hai, Anukaran theek nahi hai. We don't want, although we say imitation is the best form of flattery, but not necessarily in the spiritual world. We don't want people to just imitate the acharyas. We may follow Mahajano Inagatasya Pantha, but we don't want, like the sloka itself, Prabhupada used to quote, Tarka pratishto shuteo vibhinnam, nasavam munistasya matam na binnam, dharmasya tatam nihitam guhaya Mahajano Inagatasya Pantha. You cannot call two people as philosophers or thinkers unless they disagree. So where do you establish the truth? You establish the truth, the most confidential aspects of the Vedas. How? Mahajanoina Gatasya Pantha. This comes in Mahabharata and also quoted in the Hitopadesha. So how do we establish that? That monotonous uniformity we don't want. We don't want everybody to be a clone. At the same time, we want diversity, but that doesn't mean Bahushaka Hyanantascha Buddhaya Avyavasayana. That we don't want. We don't want a dichotomous, meaning you and I are not even looking at each other because we want to maintain our diverse opinions. So that is dichotomous diversity or fragmentation. This is a moment which is teaching everyone that we are not body but we are the soul. But this soul is different, S-O-L-E. And the soul that we're talking about is also not just at everybody's lotus feet. This soul is an acronym which stands for, from ISKCON communications terminology. Many of you would be familiar with this. So the S stands for, and O for, you can just, L for listening attentively, it should be listening, and then E for eye contact. So when you have eye contact, then you will have eye contact. That's the way. You can contact the other person when your eyes contact the other person. So this is a standard usage by most communications experts, not just ISKCON. For a moment that is based on, Srila Prabhupada said, this Bhakti Yoga starts with the process of hearing the transcendental sound vibration. There was an Ashtanga yogi who asked him, what is Bhakti Yoga? So he told him the process starts with the process of hearing transcendental sound vibration. Hearing is a biological process. Unless you have medical impairment of any type, you will be able to hear anything. But listening is something more active. So you need to have more active involvement. Like if you notice, Japa and Srimad Bhagavatam are the two parts of the morning program where we feel sleepy the most. Kirtan, Guru Puja, if you're performing Arati, no issues. But Japa, when you have to hear the mantra, Bhagavatam, when you have to hear somebody else doing Kirtan of the Lord, difficult. Because this listening is an active process, Shravanam. Therefore, when we are dealing with devotees, especially in ISKCON, it is not just devotees, but at least for those who are existing, practicing devotees, it's important for us to ensure that we follow this model, and we should clarify with simple acknowledgements when we speak with somebody like, Acha, thik ache, really, these kind of things. They reassure the other person when you're listening. It's not just this. Some words that come in. And empathic, empathetic, the dictionary says both are accepted. American English, both usages. Although empathetic sounds a little pathetic, so it seems better to use empathic. Empathic listening, normally we say putting yourself in the shoe of the other person. Although if his size is bigger, then there is a problem. But yes, Prabhu.
There's one form of Krishna that makes, as wonderful as this presentation is, there's one form of Krishna that makes this a little bit challenging, and that's Kala, time. So Krishna in the form of time sometimes, and it's two ways, the person who wants to listen, and then also the person who they want to speak, to hear from. Both have to agree to take the time to slow down and explain and interact in this way. So, can you give some tips on how to motivate both individuals, how to take the time to make that eye-to-eye connection?
Thank you, Ravi. I don't know if I'm the right person to answer you. You know more about this the answer to the question than I do, but I'll still try and present it the way I understood from other Vaishnavas. One of the things is Krishna says the whole issue is about the mind. Manaparam karana mamananti samsara chakram pariharteta. That's what the Avanti Brahmana says. The problem is nayam janome sukha dukkha hetu. My problems are not because of me or this other person. My problems are because of my mind. So if the mind is what is disturbing me having eye contact with you, or I contact you, what is happening is that, therefore Krishna says, Abhyasa inastu kauntaya vairagya sanochate. There is Abhyasa and Vairagya. Abhyasa comes in the form of constant practice. At least we start somewhere. Journey, what are the standard cliche? Journey of a million miles starts with one step. So start with, like we are doing when we're on book distribution. We don't spend too much time with a person who's very, very argumentative. We probably give him a card and say, why don't you come to the temple? And then move on. Like ISKCON Delhi this year distributed around 400,000 Bhagavad Gitas during the months of December. Out of 400,000, maybe about 250,000, 300,000 was on the streets. And Delhi people and NCR people are notorious for not having time. And there's pollution as well. So then one of the things we tell our book distributors is not spend too much time per contact. It's just standard sales gimmick. You don't spend too much time with a person who wants to work out of his objection. You move on. There is more fish in the sea than ever came out of it. Yeah, I'm getting warning that I should move on. So the point is Abhyasa and Vairagya. Vairagya in the form of the person who's trying to practice active listening and the process of unity in diversity. He has to ensure that he is renounced from the results of whatever he wants to achieve. Often we get frustrated and we stop the process because we have a certain end in mind and we expect that this person has to behave in a certain way. So at least one person has to become more patient. It's often said that the senior has to bend more. The senior has to bend more because he knows the value of humility. Juniors are juniors, quote unquote. They won't. So we'll move on, not for the, I want to honor my commitment to my partner. He has to go. Yeah. So just move on. So the point is, we don't focus on the person. We focus on the interest. And therefore, listening will help us unravel the interests, not the positions. This is a very famous story. Does anybody know? It's a classic conflict resolution story. Anyway, we won't deal with, I'll just quickly cut to the chase. So there were these two children. One of them wanted orange juice. The other one wanted a topping for the pie. There was only one orange. And the mother had to deal with the issue. And she wanted both of them to be happy. Dividing the orange into two would have been no solution because there would be insufficient juice and maybe this other girl would have not been happy. So what did she do? Standard practice. Who knows? Okay. If she made a juice out of the orange, gave it to the son, she used the peel. That's what they normally use as topping for the pie. And she gave it to the person. So that is what's called a standard win-win. Now don't ask me why the girl didn't want juice. For the moment, this is the problem. So we assume that for the peel was sufficient for this person. So how did she unravel it? She was curious. She checked with them, what do you want? Why are you crying? Or what do you want? Why are you disturbed? So they gave their requirement, they gave their interest, they gave their concerns, they elucidated or enunciated their need. From listening, she could, out of innocent curiosity, without coming to a judgment, she could understand their interests. And positions is whether I'm scissors or knife. That is a position. So I want it in a certain way. But what is the interest behind that? Let's go to the next slide. This is a very famous element. Many of you may know this. This is called the iceberg effect. Everyone knows that 1/10 of the iceberg is outside. The remaining 9/10 is below. So when you see apparent contradictory behavior or unacceptable or irrational behavior, there is a tendency on our part to assume that this person is like this. We brand the person. We generalize. But instead, if you go below, the 9/10 of it lies below. There are certain values behind which a person operates. Yes, bro.
I can't read what that says on the
Yeah,
top.
I think it's
Positions. What does it say?
Claim or demand.
Claim or demand. Thank
Claim
you.
or demand. So it is something that somebody is, if you look at right below, there are certain interests for each person because of which he acts in a certain way. There are certain values that he values. What are those values? Some are given their respect, self-esteem, dignity, security, recognition, belonging, fairness, many things. People behave in a certain way. Like in Hamlet, there is a phrase called righteous indignation. Somebody behaves in an abnormal way because he is upset due to a certain reason. What are those values? What are the hopes, the fears, the wants, the needs? Those are the real interests of the person. If you go below the iceberg, beyond the apparent contradictions that may come through because of the behavior, the 9/10 that lies below will have to be unraveled for us to actually reach the real person. That will establish the reason for that person's diversity and establish the unity between the two of us. So therefore, once you have established the unity, we now want to respond strategically in our interaction so that finally there is a win-win. So this is a standard conflict resolution model. If you look at competing, avoiding, accommodating, collaborating and compromising. Now collaborating is supposed to be the best situation where both of us win. It's called a win-win. So collaborating is that model where you're a win-win in our interaction. Avoiding is neither win nor lose. We just want to avoid the problem altogether. That's the other extreme. There is no problem because we don't want the problem. This is a way, it is not that there is a right way in interacting with people. Based on the time, place and circumstances, we may have to adopt any one of these methodologies. So one is collaborating, the other is avoiding, another one is compromising. In Hindi they say na tera na mera. You want 20, I have 10. It is like bargaining in a market, Gauranga market, Nityananda market. The seller says 20 rupees, I say 10 rupees, finally we settle on 15. Maybe our interests are not sufficiently met, but we compromise. Now the other extreme is win-win. What could be a win-win? We'll have to work it out. I don't know what is a win-win in this. In a case of 20 rupees and 10 rupees. But it has to be negotiated. It has to be discussed. And accommodating means is that some or the other, we have to get a result. You accommodate the person. It essentially says that I lose, you win. I want to yield. Some or the other, I want to. It's in one sense, it is conflict avoidance, but it is not win-win. It is lose-win. I lose, you win. That's fine. And on the other extreme is competing, win at all costs. the yellow box, is win at all costs. I win, you lose. Cutthroat. The best is, of course, collaborating. How is this? This moves on this gradient from uncooperative to cooperative. The more one is cooperative, that person is seen as either collaborating or accommodating. But when the collaborating person is assertive to enunciate his needs, interests, and concerns also, then it's collaboration. Otherwise, he's just accommodating. He doesn't want anything. He just wants the issue to be solved at any cost. So, when we deal with people, we have certain interactions in our day-to-day life. They're called exchanges, generally we say. We say 6 loving exchanges, Lakshanam, Preeti Lakshanam. So these are 6 elements that we want to bring to the table. We will describe each one of them. We have already discussed each one of them in 6 points. I'm just recapping those 6. These 6 are, the first is, somebody has a mic, we can read it out. It'll be easy. Yes, Pradeep.
Suspend assumptions.
You can pass the mic. No, you just pass, that's all. You can read, that's all.
Manage emotions.
Be curious, not judgmental. Listen,
Just read the rest.
focus on interests, not positions. Respond strategically.
So these are the 6 things that we discussed in sequence. Now, we will move straight into a demonstration of how we can do this. It will not be a nectar and poison example. We will try and capture the best of both. We'll do a small role play now. One will show us how these elements in our interaction are not met appropriately, and another will show how they are met appropriately. Now, this is just an ideal simulation. The reality could be somewhere in between.
ISKCON is a complex organization with a presence in more than 100 countries. Our lives can be intense, balancing our spiritual practices with our great varieties of service and occupation. And let's be honest, working with others, even devotees, can be challenging, even in the best of circumstances. Sometimes you need someone to listen to you and help you think and consider how to deal with a situation. An ombuds is a conflict resolution specialist that offers a confidential, informal sounding board to explore problem-solving options. We are here to support devotees by listening, asking questions, helping you consider your options, and providing information about resources. All ISKCON Resolve ombuds have been trained by experts in the field. Most often, devotees talk to the ombuds either in person or by WhatsApp or phone from somewhere private like an office, a conference room, ashram, or outdoors. Before we start, I want to review my role. The Ombud service is totally confidential. I won't share anything you say with anyone unless there is an imminent risk of serious harm.
Oh no, it's nothing like that.
Good. I'm also neutral, so I'm not an advocate for any level of devotees or ISKCON management. I am, however, an advocate for fairness. My role is to help you think things through and arrive at a way forward that you feel will best address your concern.
Well, I could use that. And I definitely want to make sure the ISKCON leadership knows what I've been going through.
I'm also independent and informal, so you aren't filing any kind of formal grievance or complaint by talking with me. ISKCON won't know anything about this unless you decide to raise it somewhere else, and I can help you with that. Does that make sense?
Okay, well, could I raise it later and still talk with you now?
Yes, of course. From there, the conversation can go in many different directions. Devotees raise concerns in a variety of categories, such as disagreements over preaching strategies, relationship challenges, leadership styles, legal and compliance issues, mistreatment, safety, philosophy, and others. With each person, the Ombuds listens, helps you get clarity about your goals, and helps you review all your options on how to deal with the situation. Communication comes up a lot, and we can help coach you on how to have productive conversations. These are the kinds of options that you might think through when speaking with an Ombuds. Communicating directly to solve a problem, raising an issue to ISKCON authorities, requesting mediation or group facilitation, seeking more information, contacting other resources such as devotee care or services dealing with conduct issues. There is generally no one right answer for any particular dilemma, but the Ombuds can help you think through the pros and cons of going one way or another, and we can help navigate you through some of the bureaucracy to help provide clarity on the options. We strive to help individuals feel more confident about what steps to take to address their concerns, and help ISKCON have a more conflict-competent culture. If you think you could benefit from talking to an Ombuds, please get in touch with us.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.